All right, let's chat with Ben in Arizona.
Please.
Because I need some education.
Hey, Ben.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Oh, we're doing okay. We're quickly being drained, but we're excited to talk with you. How are you doing?
Yeah, my blood pressure is very high now.
Yeah.
How badly did we fuck up? What's going on? We're not professionals, so like.
Yeah, I mean, you did fine. There's some things with the colors argument, and I see this a lot. People are approaching this from a very emotional standpoint, and we're missing the point with these discussions. And I kind of want to explain why that is. So beingness of the fetus or the gestation doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to this entire conversation. So I kind of want to lay out some definitions, and then we can talk about it from there. Because there's a lot of ambiguity and people are taking these terms and using them in ways that they're not intended to be used.
Okay.
So a lot of this centers around kind of two factors. So number one is that 20 weeks of gestation and earlier is considered non-viable. Once you hit 20 weeks or beyond, it's considered viable. And then even as you get closer to 24 weeks and beyond, there is a greater likelihood that if you were to deliver the gestation, that it would survive without parental help. So that's one factor. And then the other factor is whether or not it is spontaneous or induced. So I'll cover that with the specific definitions.
Okay.
So when we're talking about an abortion, this is all related to the ending of the pregnancy. It has nothing to do with whether or not the gestation survives. It is only about if the pregnancy is still happening or if it ends and at what stage the pregnancy ends.
Okay.
So an abortion, by definition, is an ending of pregnancy 20 weeks or earlier. So this could be spontaneous. So if you hear a spontaneous abortion, that's also a miscarriage. So that is a spontaneous ending of pregnancy 20 weeks or earlier. And then on the flip side, you could have a non-spontaneous or medically or surgically induced abortion. And that's a non-spontaneous ending of pregnancy 20 weeks or earlier. If it's after 20 weeks, it's a delivery. And again, this could be spontaneous or non-spontaneous. So a spontaneous delivery, your body goes into labor, you deliver the baby organically. But let's say you go into the hospital for an induction. Let's say maybe you're at 37 weeks, but the baby was going to come at 40 weeks or 39 weeks. You're inducing a delivery. This is a termination because a termination is a non-spontaneous ending of pregnancy regardless of the stage. So you could have a termination and still have a living baby, living gestation.
Interesting. Okay. So if somebody is saying that abortion is murder, they're not taking into account that we have these very, very specific definitions of things. I really have to tighten up my definitions.
That's what I was saying last week. I was like, okay, well, it's not, the goal is not to kill anything. The goal is to end the pregnancy. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, that means that the fetus doesn't survive. But
not always.
Right,
which
exactly.
highlights the point that there are different conversations being had. One is about the right of a person to make those medical decisions. And the other is that kind of armchair philosophy, when is a person kind of thing, but those may be correlated, but they're not, hand in hand. Well, correlated? No, not correlated. I don't know. I gotta work on that. Associated. Thank you, Ben. So if we're going to have this conversation in a beneficial way moving forward, what can we get better on? Like, I think I might just make flashcards, honestly. After what you said, I'm just going to go back and write it down. But coming from someone who is in the medical field who is putting in the footwork and is dealing with this pretty consistently. What are we missing, or what's being missed in this conversation?
I think we need to communicate this point that you can have a termination that's a living gestation. And especially kind of the debate then here isn't about whether or not you should have a termination. And as you mentioned, there are plenty of medical reasons why we would terminate, and I have a whole series of videos on this. But communicating that maybe the debate is around the method of termination. For example, dilation and evacuation is generally what people are talking about when they're referring to, quote, baby killing.
Right. I know that when I was growing up, that was the only thing that was talked about. The assumption was regardless of what point in the pregnancy, that was how you got rid of it.
Okay. Am I using
That's not true.
Yeah, exactly.
The other ways you can do it are with an induced delivery.
Yeah.
Using prostaglandins, so namely misoprostol, is used in, quote, abortions. It's also used to induce delivery of someone who wants to keep the baby.
Yeah.
So you can go through the same exact process to deliver a baby as you would for somebody who's at term, but you might do it earlier for a number of reasons, and that has nothing to do with if the fetus is going to survive or not.
Right.
So I guess the question really needs to be, how are we communicating the methods of these terminations? And then what are you doing? Are you taking any medical intervention after the pregnancy ends in order to preserve life or not in the gestation that is now expelled from the uterus? Because that's a whole different discussion. But I think that maybe needs to be where we take this instead of focusing on just the pregnancy itself.
Yeah, I like that. And then the conversation could be, okay, pro-life person, what are you doing to invest in ways to keep, fetuses alive outside of the womb? That seems like a much more reasonable focus and useful way to spend your time than arguing against abortion, right?
Absolutely.
I am so behind, and I'm really just seeing it. How long has it been in dilation and evacuation? Because when I learned about it, it was a D&C.
Well, you can do a D&C or a D&E. Depends.
Okay, they're different.
Yeah, they're similar, but they're different. A D&C is only used very early on. D&E can be used up to, I think, 24 weeks, and then after that, it's going to be an induced labor.
Got it. Okay.
So, wow, even the 1 to, what was the percentage of abortions that take place after 25 weeks, Ben? I know I messed up the percent.
I have no idea about statistics. I just know the medicine.
Okay. That's fair. Stay in your lane. I love it. I believe it's less than 3% of abortions take place what we would consider late term. So in those cases, which are the ones that every anti-abortion person is on about, we're not even using D&E. We're inducing delivery at that point.
Yeah.
And then there's actually a really good chance that the fetus survives anyway.
Yeah, and this is a funny statement that a certain previous president had mentioned. Just the phrase that you were ripping a baby out of the womb moments before birth is incredibly ridiculous of a statement to make, because at that stage, if they were going to organically have a delivery, and you deliver before then, you're just moving the delivery back. You're not doing anything different.
Yeah.
Just a preemie at that point.
And maybe not even. If it's 37 weeks or after, it's still term. So, if your baby was going to come out naturally at 40 weeks, but you delivered at 37 weeks, it's still a term baby, but you just took it out sooner.
Yeah. Wow. That is so crystal clear and free of, see, this is the thing. This is why I personally have so much frustration and tension around anti-choice arguments, because here's the difference, right? We see the difference in these last two calls. When you're arguing against it, it becomes this like mass of like, well, here's an analogy and here's loaded language and here's an assumption and here's maybe some science but misunderstood, and it's all kind of like this amalgamation of just confusion, and you get lost in it and you're like, okay, well, what do I correct here?
Yeah.
And then the second somebody who actually knows their shit comes on and is like, no, here's what happens, it feels like it's clear. Like you can follow the conversation a lot better. So like the second that somebody calls in with this kind of logic and background and expertise that Ben has for the other side, then we can have like a really good conversation. But I don't think that's going to happen because the science simply isn't on that side of things.
And something here too, just like this argument of people trying to make these medical decisions for other people is dangerous. Like people are practicing medicine without a license. Like they don't know the background of this. They don't know when we would need to terminate a pregnancy. And there are plenty of reasons why we would do this. And I don't want to like fear going to prison because I saved somebody from having organ failure. That's a real risk.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. There was a lawmaker in Ohio, I believe in 2018, and I forget his name. Of course, it was a he. And he signed on, he like co-sponsored a bill that would make it illegal to fix an ectopic pregnancy without, quote, putting it back into the womb. Like you couldn't operate on somebody with an ectopic pregnancy, which is an embryo that has developed outside of the womb without, quote unquote, putting it back. No scientific research at all went into this. He didn't even ask a doctor, like, is this possible? Because the second it got, like, introduced, right, everybody who knew anything was like, you can't do that. Like, we are not physically capable with our current scientific understanding of making that even happen. So people are signing these bills with absolutely not only misinformation, but zero information at all, and no effort to find that information. So yeah, as much as scientifically the science is kind of just like set at this point here, the problem ultimately is that assumption that I can make a decision as a non-expert on what an expert can and cannot do, and put some kind of moral compunction involved. So yeah, we need to move on to the next call. But Ben, as always, thank you for calling in. You're a breath of fresh air, man. We'll make sure that in the description we link to your channel. Guys, Ben does his own stuff on YouTube and regularly breaks down really important medical and scientific topics that are, current and influencing social conversations today. So Ben, thanks for calling in.
And I'll see you this weekend.
You will see us this weekend. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Yeah, people were wondering, is that student Dr. Ben?
Yes, indeed. Yes, it is.